You are listening to KiCKFLiP Radio.
So imagine for a second that you are hiring a contractor to build your absolute dream home.
Okay, I can picture that.
Right, so you've saved up, you've planned every single detail, and you finally find someone whose work just looks incredible.
Oh, that's always the best feeling, honestly.
Exactly. So naturally, you hand over a massive check up front.
Which is, pretty standard for big projects.
Yeah, you're thrilled. But then as they start, actually laying the foundation, you notice something buried in the fine print of the contract you just signed.
Uh-oh. I feel like I know where this is going.
It's a clause that explicitly says you are not allowed to speak to the contractor while they work, at all.
Wait, literally zero communication.
Literally zero. If you ask a single question about, say, why the kitchen is being built in the garage,
right,
or why there are no roads leading up to the house, they keep your money, they padlock the gate, and they walk away forever.
I mean, that sounds like a completely absurd thought experiment.
It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like a complete breakdown of basic business logic that would never, ever hold up in the physical world.
No, of course not. But the crazy thing is, in decentralized digital spaces, this exact scenario isn't some hypothetical situation.
Right.
It's actually a structural reality that plays out all the time.
It really is, and that is exactly why we're here today.
Yes, which brings us to the core of what we are doing. We're taking a deep dive into a really fascinating stack of material today, centered entirely on the virtual economy of Second Life.
A very unique, very complex economy.
Absolutely. Specifically, we are looking at this massive, highly active community forum thread that documents a recent landscaping dispute between two residents.
Yeah, and we are pairing that thread with a really incredible analytical paper by the author KiCKFLiP.
Right, the paper's titled, When a Deal Goes Wrong, What One Incident Reveals About Governance, Risk, and Responsibility in Second Life.
It's such a good title, and it really hits the nail on the head, but I think we need to set some ground rules right out of the gate for this deep dive.
Good idea. Let's make sure everyone is on the same page.
Our goal here is absolutely not to point fingers or, play virtual detective.
Right. No witch hunts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are not here to assign blame to the specific individuals involved in this particular internet drama. The actual identities of the people are completely irrelevant to the larger issue.
So true. We're looking at the systems.
Yes. The focus must remain on the systems themselves. We're essentially using this highly documented real-world incident as a lens.
A lens to examine what exactly happens when trust fundamentally breaks down in a user-driven handshake economy.
Exactly. We want to look at the architecture of the platform, the patterns of human behavior that architecture encourages, and honestly, what systems actually exist or fail to exist to support you when a deal goes totally south.
Okay, so let's just jump right into the mechanical breakdown of this transaction, because I think the dollar amounts and the expectations really set the stage for everything that follows.
They absolutely do. Money makes things very real, very fast.
Right. So we have a resident, who we'll just call the client for the sake of clarity.
Perfect.
And this client is commissioning a large-scale virtual landscaping project. This isn't just dropping a couple of trees. This is a massive custom build.
It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, and they paid an upfront fee of 60,000 Linden dollars.
Wow.
Yeah, and to contextualize that, for anyone listening who might not trade in Second Life currency, the exchange rate basically puts that at roughly 233 US dollars.
That is a lot of money. I mean, that is real money leaving a real bank account, changing hands before a single virtual asset is actually placed.
Exactly. And the nature of that upfront payment creates this immediate, almost massive power imbalance, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Because from the documentation in the forum, we can see that the communication between the two parties deteriorated incredibly fast after that money changed hands.
How fast are we talking?
Well, the client logged into the game, looked at the initial framework of the landscaping that was being done, and realized it just didn't align with the vision they had paid for.
Okay, like what kind of discrepancies?
So they noted there were no drivable roads, which, by the way, had been a very specific request from the client.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a pretty big miss.
Right. And the virtual houses were all lined up rigidly in this straight row, rather than forming the organic, cohesive neighborhood community they were really trying to build.
Okay, so if you were paying hundreds of dollars for a bespoke custom service, just asking for a progress update or a minor course correction seems like, well, the absolute baseline of consumer interaction.
You would think so, right?
Yeah. But the landscaper's response, at least according to the chat logs in the thread, shut that down instantly.
It was immediate.
They cited these strict rules from their own contract, claiming the client was violating the agreement simply by interrupting the workflow to ask these questions.
Right, which leads to the absolute breakdown.
Yeah. The result was the landscaper terminating the project completely. They left the digital land unfinished, blocked the client across all communication platforms, and outright refused any refund of the 60,000 lindens.
And see, if we stop right there, we basically just have a standard, albeit super frustrating, contract dispute.
Right. Service not delivered, funds retained. Happens all the time.
Exactly. But what escalates this from a generic customer service failure into a really profound case study of digital sociology is the human element.
The human element is what makes this so tough to read.
It really is. The client was incredibly vulnerable in their communication. They explicitly explained to the service provider that they were neurodivergent.
Specifically autistic, right?
Yes, specifically autistic. And they explained that they struggled with the vagueness of the contract and the lack of ongoing communication.
They were just asking for help, basically.
They were actively asking for grace. They were trying to bridge a comprehension gap so they could understand what was happening with their money.
And digital spaces, especially these big sandbox worlds like Second Life, they have historically been vital safe havens for marginalized groups and neurodivergent individuals.
Absolutely. They offer these controlled environments for social interaction.
Right. So when someone explicitly discloses that vulnerability to you, asking for basic clarity, and the response is not just a refusal, but outright condescension, that fundamentally changes the stakes.
It shifts the entire tone of the interaction.
Because the source material shows the provider dismissing the client's disability as just an excuse for not following the rules and allegedly even laughing at the client's confusion.
And that is the exact threshold where this transcends a simple disagreement over where virtual roads should be placed.
Exactly. It's not about the roads anymore.
No, it becomes an issue of basic human dignity. The client actually posted in the forum, and this quote really stuck with me. They said, "The money isn't the issue, the where she spoke to me is."
Wow. Yeah, that really gets to the heart of it.
It does. This intense personal breakdown forces us to look past the two individuals and examine the actual environment they are operating in.
Right, the ecosystem itself.
Yes. KiCKFLiP Numbers points out in their paper that this wasn't just a failure of communication between two people. It was a completely predictable failure of the Second Life economic environment itself.
Okay, I want to unpack that.
Yeah.
Because if we look at traditional online games, say World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, transactions are like hard-coded into the game engine.
Very structured.
Yeah, you place an item in a trade window, the other person places their gold, you both click accept, and the system swaps them simultaneously.
Right. There is basically zero reliance on trust in those systems.
Exactly. But the Second Life doesn't function like a theme park game at all. It functions like a decentralized freelance economy.
That's a great way to put it.
The platform provides this wildly open-ended scripting language and all these building tools, but the residents themselves act as the independent creators, designers, and service providers.
And because the creation tools are so open-ended, the transactions are entirely informal. You are paying for time, labor, and custom design. You aren't just buying a pre-programmed item off a shelf.
Right.
Agreements are enforced almost entirely by reputation and word of mouth. There are no structured, platform-wide escrow systems for freelance labor.
So think about your own digital life for a second. If you hire a freelance graphic designer on Upwork or commission a voiceover on Fiverr, there were massive structural guardrails in place.
Oh, huge guardrails.
Your funds are held in escrow. If the provider doesn't deliver, or if they deliver something completely wildly off-brief, you just click a dispute button.
Right, and a neutral mediator steps in, reviews the chat logs, and if the provider failed, you get your money back.
Simple as that. But in Second Life, it is a pure handshake economy.
A literal handshake.
You are essentially walking into a digital coffee shop, handing $233 in cash to a total stranger just because they have a good forum reputation and hoping they follow through.
And KiCKFLiP Numbers really explores the deep philosophical trade-off inherent in that specific design choice. Because Second Life's defining characteristic is its unparalleled creative freedom.
You can build literally anything.
Anything. You can script new physics, design entirely new economies within the economy. But the question is, does that absolute freedom fundamentally require the absence of formal protection?
That is the tension at the heart of this entire dispute.
Exactly. How much risk should residents reasonably expect to carry? If you want the limitless freedom of a decentralized, user-driven world, do you inherently have to accept the dangers of a completely lawless one?
It's tough because the moment you introduce an escrow system or some forced platform-wide contract mechanism, you probably stifle the organic, messy creativity that makes the platform so unique in the first place.
You do. It becomes corporate.
Right. But without those guardrails, the only thing binding two parties is the communication between them and whatever user-generated contract they happen to agree to.
Which brings us to the actual contract clauses in this specific scenario.
Oh boy. Let's look at the actual rules the provider relied on, because honestly, they are staggering.
And it really are.
The rules explicitly stated things like, do not rush me, do not interrupt me to tell me what you don't like during setup, and then this ultimate catch-all rule, allowed to terminate any process.
I mean, we really have to evaluate the ethical weight of those clauses. Can a written contract, especially one that reads like a copy-pasted list of hostile ultimatums, ever truly replace clear, ongoing human communication?
I would argue no.
I agree. Furthermore, does a service provider have an inherent responsibility to ensure a client fully understands an agreement, especially when neurodivergence and comprehension struggles are explicitly brought up by that client?
Okay, but wait, hold on. Let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go for it.
If I transfer 60,000 lindens after clicking agree on a rule set that explicitly says, do not contact me while I work, haven't I technically consented to that framework?
From a purely mechanical standpoint, yes.
Right. Like, harsh or not, the creator is just enforcing a boundary I willingly accepted. If we start saying that creators can't enforce their own contracts just because a client later decides the rules are too strict, doesn't the entire freelance system kind of collapse?
That is the exact defense often used.
Yeah.
And from a legalistic perspective, it's true. The landscaper technically followed their own rigid, self-imposed rules.
Right.
But this is where KiCKFLiP numbers introduces a truly brilliant distinction that completely recontextualizes the whole argument.
Okay, what's the distinction?
It's a difference between misunderstanding and misconduct.
Oh, I like that. Misunderstanding versus misconduct.
Exactly. A client not understanding the severity of a no-contact rule, especially when they've asked for clarity, that is a misunderstanding.
Sure.
But a provider enforcing that rule by mocking the client's disclosed autism, that is misconduct.
Wow. Yeah, that is the defining line right there.
You can terminate a contract because a rule was broken, sure. But you cannot weaponize the contract to bypass basic professional conduct and human empathy.
Because tone and respect are just as critical as the technical delivery of the virtual good itself.
Precisely. In this case, the rigid contract was essentially used as a shield to justify abusive behavior.
Which is terrifying as a consumer.
It is, because if we accept that a strict contract can be weaponized in this way, it shifts the entire burden of safety onto the buyer.
Yeah, you essentially have to act as your own private risk assessment algorithm before the money ever leaves your account.
You do. You have to predict the worst case scenario.
So what does that threat modeling actually look like for a user? If the platform isn't going to protect you, how do you protect yourself out there?
Well, both KiCKFLiP numbers paper and the community thread outline some massive red flags in virtual service agreements that every single user should be standing for.
Okay, let's break those down. What's red flag number one?
Red flag number one is the massive upfront payment request.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Handing over 100% of the funds before the work even begins is a staggering vulnerability, regardless of what platform you're on.
Absolutely. Okay, what about red flag number two?
Red flag number two is the unsolicited pitch.
Like cold calling.
Exactly. In the source documentation, the client noted that the provider actually approached them out of the blue via direct messages.
Oh, really? I missed that detail.
Yeah. The provider claimed to have a lot of business and offered their services proactively. And in hindsight, the client realized this might have actually indicated the provider was desperate for work.
Which entirely contradicts the stellar high-demand reputation they were claiming to have. If you are that good, people come to you, you know.
Exactly. And then we have the third red flag, which seems to be the linchpin in this specific disaster.
The communication clauses.
Yes, no contact or severely restricted communication clauses. Think about it. If you're paying for a custom bespoke service, whether that's a virtual landscape, a custom website, or even a real-world dining table, and the creator tells you that you are not allowed to ask questions during the process.
You are not buying a service at that point.
No, you're really not.
You are basically funding a hostage situation. It fundamentally contradicts the entire nature of iterative custom design. How can they build your vision if they won't talk to you?
They can't. Knowing these red flags, KiCKFLiP Numbers lays out a really highly practical framework for resident protection.
Let's hear it.
First, aggressively vet portfolios and references. Do not just rely solely on the curated images a provider shows you.
Right, because anyone can take a good screenshot.
Exactly. Look for independent reviews or actively speak to previous clients in the community.
Do your homework. What's next?
Second, insist on milestone-based payment structures.
This is huge.
A standard practice should be paying a small deposit to secure the time, then paying a secondary installment at, say, the halfway mark, and holding the final payment until the project is completed to your satisfaction.
That just makes sense for everybody involved. It protects the creator, too.
It does. And the most critical step of all, heavy cross-platform documentation.
Save the receipts.
Save everything. Save your chat logs. Use in-game note cards to summarize verbal agreements so there is an actual time-stamped record within the platform.
Take screenshots of the progress, all of it.
Yes. But this naturally leads us to the most frustrating systemic failure of all.
Which is?
What happens when you do everything right?
Oh, right.
Or what happens when you make an honest mistake in reading a confusing contract, the deal explodes, a provider turns hostile, and you suddenly realize the community's handshake has completely failed?
Naturally, you look to the platform for mediation. You look for the manager, essentially.
You do. And that brings us to the absolute core of this analysis, the governance gap.
This is where KiCKFLiP Numbers paper gets incredibly piercing. There is a gaping structural hole in platform support when it comes to complex human-driven disputes.
It's massive. We really have to look at how user interfaces dictate user behavior in these situations.
What do you mean by that?
Well, current reporting systems in Second Life, much like a lot of legacy virtual platforms, force users to categorize their trauma or their disputes very, very narrowly.
Right.
When you attempt to report an issue, the system's drop-down menus essentially demand that you classify the event. They ask, is this a purely financial issue? Is it a conduct and harassment issue? Or is it a technical glitch?
And Second Life offers these standard abuse reports, which are, from what the community says, notoriously limited in their scope. They often require exact coordinates and immediate logging.
Yes, or they offer support tickets, which are almost exclusively designed for technical problems.
Like billing errors or losing an item in your inventory.
Exactly. But human conflict doesn't fit neatly into 3 rigid checkboxes.
It never does. A user in the forum thread actually highlighted this perfectly.
What did they say?
They pointed out the systemic blind spot. They said you simply cannot submit a harassment or abuse report through the standard support ticket system. The architecture of the UI literally prevents it.
So think about the absolute nightmare of trying to report the scenario we've been discussing today. It is such a multi-layered dispute.
Let's break it down. It involves $60,000 in stolen Linden dollars.
Which is a financial issue.
Right. It involves unfinished digital assets sitting on a specific plot of land.
Which is a technical and property issue.
Yep. It involves the provider blocking the client, not just in-world, but on external platforms like Discord, which crosses jurisdictional lines entirely.
A massive gray area.
And on top of all that, it involves verbal harassment and discrimination regarding a disclosed disability.
Which is a severe conduct issue.
Exactly. So where do you put that in a drop-down menu?
You don't. It fits nowhere.
If the system doesn't reflect the complex ways people actually interact, create, and conflict within the world, the system itself becomes a barrier to justice.
It really does. When complex cases are abandoned simply because of rigid UI design, because there is literally no option for financial scam compounded by discriminatory verbal abuse, the user is left feeling entirely isolated.
And we see that isolation in the client's own words in the forum. They are devastating.
Yeah, that part was hard to read.
They wrote, "Sometimes I really dislike Second Life. I was looking for a reason to just cut ties with SL, and I think I found it."
And that isn't just someone upset about losing a few $100s. That is the sound of platform trust actively dying.
It is. When a user feels they have nowhere to turn, trust in the safety of the entire virtual world just evaporates.
But acknowledging that gap is really only half the battle. KiCKFLiP Numbers analysis doesn't stop at just diagnosing the problem, which I appreciate.
Right, they pivot to solutions.
It moves into what governance could do. And this is where the conversation shifts from critique to really constructive, realistic solutions.
Which is important because we're not talking about demanding some impossible utopia where Linden Lab polices every single conversation between every single user.
No, that would be absurd. We're talking about practical policy and interface shifts.
So let's talk about KiCKFLiP's proposed solutions. They suggest expanded reporting tools first, which seems like the most obvious first step.
It's the most critical one. Right now, context is everything in these disputes. The agreement might happen in an in-game chat, but the payment happens through the platform.
And then the harassment or the refusal to deliver might happen over a Discord voice call or a direct message.
Exactly. The reporting system desperately needs to allow users to attach cross-platform context. They need to be able to upload screenshots, email logs, chat exports.
To show the full, true scope of the breakdown. Otherwise, support is just looking at a tiny fraction of the picture.
Right. Following that, the system needs mixed category dispute options.
A hybrid ticketing system.
Yes, a system that actually acknowledges that human conflict is messy. A user needs to be able to flag a single ticket as both a financial dispute and a harassment claim simultaneously.
And route it to a team equipped to handle layered trauma rather than having it auto-rejected just because it didn't perfectly match a single criteria.
Exactly. And KiCKFLiP also suggests educational guidance on baseline conduct.
Like a rule book.
Not necessarily hard punitive laws, but platform-endorsed standards of professional interaction. A clear document that basically says, if you operate a business in this world, this is the baseline of empathy and communication we expect from you.
Okay, but let me push back on this for a second. The immediate counter-argument to all of this, and it's a valid one from a corporate scaling perspective, is bandwidth.
The manpower issue.
Yeah. Should governance really be stepping into resident-to-resident disputes over virtual tree placement? If a platform has hundreds of thousands of active users, Linden Lab acting as a micromanager for every single landscaping disagreement sounds completely impossible to scale.
It sounds like assigning a homicide detective to investigate every single unpaid parking ticket in a major city.
Exactly. It would completely paralyze the support team.
But KiCKFLiP clarifies the nuance here beautifully. It is absolutely not about micromanaging the creative output or the tree placement.
Okay.
It is about implementing a system of light mediation.
Light mediation.
Right. Often when a resident experiences this kind of deep betrayal, they don't necessarily need a full drawn-out trial. They just need their report acknowledged by a human being.
They want to be seen.
They need to know the platform sees the misconduct and logs it.
And from a security standpoint, minimal review processes are actually how you flag serial bad actors over time.
That's the key.
If a single user is hiding behind the handshake economy loopholes to repeatedly extract 60,000 lindens from new clients and then weaponizing contracts to block them, the platform needs a data structure that connects those dots.
Light mediation isn't about solving every petty fight. It's about identifying the guy with 500 unpaid parking tickets who is actively harming the community.
Right. We aren't asking for a perfect, omniscient justice system. We are just asking for realistic improvements that protect the platform's most vital resource.
Because making these changes isn't just a moral imperative for the developers, it is an existential economic necessity.
Which brings us to a concept KiCKFLiP Numbers heavily emphasizes in the paper. The enthusiasts.
The enthusiasts. I love this concept.
If you spend any time in digital economies, you know exactly who these people are. They are the heavy contributors.
The landowners.
The community leaders, the scripters, the builders who spend massive amounts of their real-world money, time, and emotional energy to fund and create experiences for others.
They are the absolute economic engine of the platform. Without them, there is no world.
Exactly. Look at the client in our source story today. They are the textbook definition of an enthusiast.
But they really are. They were not dropping 60,000 lindens just to build some private digital mansion to sit in alone.
No. The client explicitly stated their motivation in the forum. They said, I wanted to build something for people who had nothing, nowhere to go.
Their financial investment was large, sure, but their emotional investment was absolutely staggering. They were actively trying to build a safe haven, a true community asset.
So if you are listening to this right now, and you participate in any digital community, whether it's an MMO guild, a creative server, or a decentralized platform, let this thought sink in. If the enthusiasts, the people actually building the world, feel entirely unsupported and actively exploited by the systems in place, what happens to the world itself?
The world stagnates, and eventually it dies. The enthusiasts pack up their time, their money, and their empathy, and they migrate to a platform that actually protects them.
They take their energy elsewhere. But I do want to make sure I don't paint this as an entirely bleak landscape.
Right, because it's not all bad.
No, the community response documented in the source material is actually incredibly uplifting.
It was amazing to read.
When the client posted their story, the forum didn't just ignore them. You read through that massive thread, and for every moment of heartbreak the client shared about being mocked, there were multiple residents jumping in to catch them.
People were publicly offering to donate lindens out of their own pockets.
Yeah, people like Frankie Jade LaFox and Minnie Clover were offering to step in and do the landscaping work entirely for free, and just offering basic human solidarity.
It is such a powerful testament to the community culture that exists there. It proves that the human element of Second Life, the empathy of the user base, is incredibly strong. They rallied to correct the injustice themselves.
But relying on community goodwill and word-of-mouth mob justice is a severe double-edged sword.
It is, because it's chaotic.
Extremely chaotic.
Yeah.
Because right alongside those beautiful offers of free landscaping, the thread was instantly infiltrated by bottom feeders.
Scammers.
Yeah. If you look at the logs, you see multiple cybersecurity chargeback scam bots appearing almost immediately in the replies.
Oh, I hate those bots.
These are automated scripts that scrape forums for keywords like scammed, lindens, or stolen money. They automatically reply to the victim, claiming they are these elite hackers who can infiltrate the scammer's crypto wallet and recover the funds.
For a small upfront fee, of course.
Of course. Always an upfront fee. It is the darkest side of the decentralized web.
These bots prey entirely on desperation. They see a wounded user, someone who is already frantic and feeling abandoned by the official governance systems, and they swoop in to victimize them a second time.
It perfectly underscores why a platform cannot ever rely solely on a reputation system and community policing.
You need structure.
An unregulated environment doesn't just expose the most vulnerable users to the initial bad actor, it turns them into bleeding targets for secondary predators.
Community support is beautiful, and it's absolutely vital to a healthy platform, but it cannot ever replace structured, systemic governance.
Wow. We have traced an incredible arc today.
We really have covered a lot of ground.
We started with a localized dispute over undrivable virtual roads and a 60,000 linden transaction.
We watched a simple misunderstanding over a rigid contract morph into targeted personal mockery regarding a disability.
We examined the profound philosophical dangers of the handshake economy and the glaring architectural gaps in how platforms categorize human trauma.
And we touched on the existential importance of protecting the enthusiasts who actually breathe life into these digital spaces.
It really is a profound case study in digital sociology. As our physical and digital lives continue to seamlessly merge, the problems we face don't become less human, and they certainly don't become less painful.
No, they just become infinitely more complex, hiding behind avatars and drop-down menus.
The systems governing these spaces simply must evolve to meet that complexity.
You cannot build a thriving economy entirely on the naive assumption that everyone will behave honorably and then act completely surprised when the most vulnerable users are exploited.
Which leaves us with a final, vital thought to carry with you.
I'm ready.
As we all spend more of our real money on intangible assets, and as we invest deeper pieces of our real hearts into these virtual communities, what will ultimately define the success of the metaverse?
That is the million-dollar question.
Will it be graphic fidelity, infinite frame rates, and limitless creation tools? Or will it be the existence of a true digital bill of rights?
Because if the gate to your dream home is padlocked, and the system refuses to help you find the key, it doesn't really matter how beautiful the house is.
Exactly. How long can any virtual world survive if it treats empathy, clear communication, and structured dispute resolution as optional add-ons?
Not very long at all.
Think about that next time you click agree on a user contract. Stay curious, protect your digital footprint, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to KiCKFLiP Radio.
I feel blessed to be here in this place, but to fully say what I feel right